大家好，我係秦怡經。今日嚟到士嘉堡呢，就出席咗一個由移民部長 Sean Fraser 剛剛做過嘅記者招待會，關於就係俗稱救生艇嘅俾香港人嘅呢個工作證啦，同埋嚟加拿大呢一個移民嘅計劃。
You may be aware, of course, a few years ago, Canada announced new pathways for open work permits and for permanent residency for people seeking to come to Hong Kong. The permanent residency side programs remain open until 2026, allowing those who've got work experience in Canada or who've studied in Canada to qualify for permanent residency. But we also developed a program that created new open work permits that were valid for up to 3 years for people who had a Canadian post-secondary degree or equivalent foreign credential or a diploma for a program of at least 2 years. That program was due to expire very soon, within about a day. In fact, I'm very pleased to share we're going to be making 2 important changes to this program. And I'm pleased to announce on behalf of the Government of Canada this morning that we are going to be extending the application deadline by 2 years. So people applying for the program will have an additional 2 years to apply until February 7th, 2025. In addition, we're also changing the eligibility for the program for Hong Kong residents who previously needed to have completed their studies within the last 5 years, and we're expanding it to allow anyone who has completed their studies within the past 10 years to be eligible. This program change comes directly from feedback we heard from the community. We wanted to see more people become eligible for the program and give them more time to apply.
今日移民部長嘅宣佈呢，就係皆因呢聽日呢救生艇呢個工作證 Open Work Permit 嘅計劃呢就會係到期。咁今日呢係作出咗2個宣佈。第一就係將呢一個工作證嘅限期呢伸延多2年。換句話講呢，係仲有2年後2025年之前呢，香港嘅朋友呢仲可以繼續利用呢一個 Open Work Permit。第2個宣佈呢，就係將呢一個條件去申請 Open Work Permit 嘅呢係修改咗。而家呢，就係喺5年內畢業嘅朋友先至能夠申請，佢就將呢一個條件呢，就係擴大去到10年內。不過相應嘅移民條件呢，就冇修訂喎。咁我就將呢一個問題係同呢一個移民部長 Sean Fraser 提問過。佢話咧會繼續研究，需唔需要特別再有其他安排俾香港因應 Open Work Permit 嚟到申請移民嘅朋友。
Good morning, Minister. Andrea Chen from Singtel Media Group. I just wanted to clarify. You mentioned that you don't want to open up another possible or change the existing corresponding immigration application requirements into 10 years. We have already heard from the reports on the ground that the graduates in this 2016-2017 group are facing a lot of challenges in terms of applying for permanent residence. Presumably, these folks don't want to come and just work in Canada for 3 years. Their ultimate goal is to immigrate to Canada, and we want to attract these people. What type of metric do you really need in order to convince you need to correspondingly change the permanent resident requirements? Because right now, if these people after 3 years, they're just thrown into this big pool, and you know how long that wait is. How are you going to measure that? What is going to change your mind? Because that's not going to attract people to come. In fact, it renders this a temporary work permit program rather than a permanent residence program to help these people leave Hong Kong permanently, especially when their services after they come are unfunded, as Anna pointed out. Thank you.
Look, thanks very much. And just a point of clarity, you led your question saying that we don't want to make changes to the permanent residency. It's not that we don't want to, it's that we haven't yet made a decision to do that. So we're examining right now the possibilities of shifting the requirements within the program, but we want to determine whether people will have the opportunity to transition to permanent residency through the extension of the open work permit under the existing permanent residency standard. And we'll probably, need to assess as people start to use the new expanded pathway to whether they're actually able to do that successfully. One of the things that is really important to me is that when we're dealing with permanent residency, we want to make sure that we're creating pathways for people who are going to have the biggest impact on the Canadian economy, and knowing that they plan to be here for 40 and 50 years. So I'm hesitant before measures are fully baked in terms of what comes next to suggest that we might do one thing or another when there's different options that are under consideration. But to start, I would suggest that we've seen, based on the data, that the introduction of the open work permit does actually create a groundswell of applications, a major increase in the number of applications that we see each year for people who come to Canada, many of whom do want to work and stay. Not all of them, but many of them do want to come and work and stay. Just to reiterate the point that I made when I went over some of the numbers, we used to see about 1,500 applications a year. After we created this pathway over about 2.5 years, we've seen 17,000 applications. We're now going to be expanding the eligibility for a much larger cohort of people, and I expect we're probably going to see an increase in applications again. So I would debate the point that a temporary program won't increase interest in coming to Canada, but the piece that I have not yet figured out is whether with the increased number of people who can apply for the open work permit, whether they will be able to qualify under existing permanent residency streams, or whether we need further changes to the existing pathways specific to Hong Kong that will create that opportunity for them. I don't think we necessarily need to wait the full 3 years to figure that out. I think we're starting to see trends of people who are transitioning to qualify for the previous program now. But I'd like to see a little bit more information come in about whether they can access pathways outside of the Hong Kong specific pathways to determine whether we also need to make changes to the Hong Kong specific pathways to allow them to qualify for permanent residency, if that makes sense.